What makes this album so special is that it's almost an album out of time, but
Yeah,
on time. It's also
yeah.
an album very much on time. And I was wondering, what is it about time and your intentions of breaking it that works for you as a writer?
I think well, I can picture like this. Like when I do get creative, I tap into the times that I felt music the most, right? And those times were times past, right? But the thing is as well, I always, because I exist in now, you know what
Mm,
I'm saying?
mm,
I think that as much as I, tap into times past, I'm a very self-aware person in that sense. I know where I'm at, but I also know what I love as well. So I think the time, the sort of playoff of the past and the present, not even necessarily the future, but the past and the present, play into how I make my music. Do you know what I'm saying? It's it's a mindfulness of not only just like current events, but how things move. Like movement changes over time as well. Even if you look at even if you look at music, right? If you look at hip hop music from, say, let's say the movement of the music, the actual patterns and the way it moves and the way it affects you
right.
had changed between, let's say, the mid 80s even up to the late 80s, and then the late 80s through the 90s. There was all the way it moved was very different, right? So like, for example, a lot of people sort of might comment on how in the mid 80s people would use a lot of drum machines, for example, right? People would use the TR-808 or the DMX drum machine, right? And they'll
Yeah.
program stuff in a certain way, right? It's very electronic, I mean, a lot of people like to talk about analog stuff, but it was all electronic, right? And then when we started using samplers and stuff, right? The emphasis became more on it being funky. Do you know what I mean? So if you remember in the late 80s and through the early 90s, the primary goal was to be funky. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And no, that's not even necessarily sampling funk music. It's just more like the rhythm of it or the attitude, the rhythm and the attitude combined, right? Um, and I believe that a lot of that is to a lot of that has contributed to why people loved it so much. Do you know what I'm saying? And then if you think about from the 90s on through the 2000 up to now, that there's a lot less of a emphasis on uh, the music being funky. Do you know what I mean? So